If you thought Mike Pence's campaign announcement in Iowa yesterday was bad, just wait until you get a look at his CNN town hall, which was hosted by Dana Bash. You know, one of the things that is very interesting to see with these modern right wingers is how quickly their talking points fall apart, not when presented with opposition per se from the other side, but simply when there is any follow up. And Dana Bash, as you will see during some of these clips, provides just really simple questions that Mike Pence at some point doesn't even know how to respond to. Now, to his credit, I will say Pence is starting to draw some distinction with Donald Trump. And you've got to do that if you're going to justify people voting for you instead of Trump when you served under Trump. Why would they go for the number two if they like the number one when number one is running? Okay, you understand that. Here is Pence saying Trump thinks Putin's a genius. I think Putin is a war criminal. All right, at least it's a distinction.
Donald Trump said in his CNN town hall, he was asked whether he wanted Ukraine to win the war, and he would not say. What message does that send to Vladimir Putin?
Well, and frankly, when Vladimir Putin rolled into Ukraine, the former president called him a genius. I know the difference between a genius and a war criminal.
Right.
And I know who needs to win in the war in Ukraine. And it's the people fighting for their freedom and fighting to restore their national sovereignty in Ukraine. And America, it's not our war, but freedom is our fight. And we need to give the people of Ukraine the ability to fight and defend their freedom.
Even the applause is milquetoast. Like, it's not just the answers. Nobody seems in any way inspired by this. But listen, to Pence's credit, there are other people running in this Republican primary who aren't even willing to say that. So credit where credit is due, even if it's for pathetically small things. Now, here was a really interesting moment. Dana Bash seemed to visibly stump Mike Pence when she pointed out, you know, deterrent, claiming that the death penalty for shootings will be a deterrent doesn't make sense when many of the mass shooters want to be killed. And Pence was visibly stumped by this. A very interesting moment.
I'm going to quickly go back to something you said about expediting the processing of people who engage in mass shootings. A lot of people who are mass shooters, they go in with the intention to die.
Right.
So how would the threat of execution be a deterrent?
Well, I follow these stories just as closely as you do. And of course, our years in the White House, we saw one tragedy after another. And I know we hear that, and we see evidence oftentimes in the aftermath that they went in without regard to whether they would survive.
Right.
But I just believe in the deterrent of the law.
Ah.
And I believe perhaps if we made it clear, I mean, think about this. The Parkland shooter is going to spend the rest of his life in jail.
True.
In Florida. And that's not justice.
Okay. He believes in the deterrent of law, but that passing stricter gun laws wouldn't make a difference. How is that possible? The death penalty would be a deterrent, even though, as Dana Bash correctly points out, many of these shooters plan to die. They want to die. Sometimes they take their own lives if they aren't taken by first responders. So that's going to be a deterrent. But stricter gun laws won't be a deterrent? That doesn't really make any sense. It's as incoherent as many of these modern Republican positions. Mike Pence talked falsely about how Democrats want abortion on demand until the moment of birth, which, of course, isn't true. And Dana Bash points that out.
The Democrat Party's position is abortion on demand with taxpayer dollars all the way up to the moment of birth.
Says who?
And as we talk about the possibility of a national standard, say a 15-week standard, which would put America more in line with most of the European Union. Most of the European countries have either a 12 to 15-week rule on abortion. Our laws today are more in line with China, Iran, and North Korea. And for my part, if I have the great privilege to serve as President of the United States, I'll support the cause of life at every level, the state level, the local level, with taxpayer dollars, and at the national level.
And just the person you're running against, or you want to run against, if you get the nomination, is President Biden. He says that codifying Roe versus Wade is his position. That means a right to an abortion until the point of viability, not up until birth. But
And Mike Pence smirking at being told the truth about the widespread position from Joe Biden on that issue. On the question of Trump's crimes, Pence seems to be going with, yes, Trump committed crimes and attempted to violate the Constitution, but we kind of should just move on with no consequences.
I think now more than ever, we ought to be finding ways we could actually come together.
Sir, we're going to get
and
to
this kind of action by the Department of Justice, I think, would only fuel further division in the country. And let me also say, I think it would also send a terrible message to the wider world. I mean, we're the emblem of democracy. We're the symbol of justice in the world. And the serious matter, which has already happened once in New York, of indicting a former president of the United States, sends a terrible message to the world. I hope the DOJ thinks better of it and resolves these issues without an indictment.
Sir, I just want to clarify. What you're saying is that if they believe he committed a crime, they should not go forward with an indictment. You just talked before about...
No, look,
by the way, anybody else noticing how Pence does this weird thing where while Dana Bash is talking to him, he doesn't look at her. He just looks out into the middle distance. It's a very strange thing, and Pence does this to a lot of people.
Getting to the rule of law.
let me be clear that no one's above the law.
Okay.
But with regard to the unique circumstances here...
No one's above the law. But... Okay, just a couple more of these. Pence says that he has no interest in pardoning the individuals convicted for rioting on January 6th.
The Constitution of the United States.
Sir, on that, Donald Trump says he is, quote, inclined to pardon many members of the mob who attacked the Capitol on January 6th. Those people were, of course, part of the same mob who built gallows and chanted about wanting to hang you.
Right.
Would you consider pardoning any of them?
You know, on the day of January 6th, I issued a tweet demanding that people leave the Capitol.
Folks, he tweeted.
And end the violence. And I said that those that failed to do that should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Right.
And I continue to believe that today. We cannot ever allow what happened on January 6th to happen again in the heart of our democracy.
What about the
question?
question?
I'll stand by the decisions and the due process of court in our laws. And I have no interest or no intention of pardoning those that assaulted police officers or vandalized our Capitol.
All right. Now, understand that even there, he's saying he has no interest in pardoning those who assaulted police officers or vandalized the Capitol. But if there are people who were charged for other things, he doesn't seem to be ruling that out. Although with Pence, you never really know what he means with his slippery language. And then lastly, Pence refusing to rule out pardoning Donald Trump if he were to be elected president.
Sir, if Donald Trump is convicted of a crime and you're elected president, would you pardon him?
Well, I don't want to speak about hypotheticals.
Oh.
I'm not sure I'm going to be elected president of the United States.
I'm sure that you're not, but okay. Dana, I'm going to decline to answer that on the basis that I have absolutely no path to the nomination whatsoever, and I don't even know why I'm really here. So on that basis, I'm going to decline to answer that question.
But I believe we have a fighting chance. I really believe we do.
Yeah.
And if you are...
And I would hope, again, Dana, you're as persistent as ever. CNN is living up to its reputation. But look, there are real issues the American people are facing. And rather than talking about that, right. I want to talk about what the...
So he doesn't want to answer that question. So a disastrous campaign launch for Mike Pence, no path to the nomination, but could he end up helping Trump in Trump's path to the Republican nomination? We'll talk about that maybe tomorrow, maybe on Monday. If you deal with anxiety or depression, you may have tried meditation, exercise, diet changes, therapy. all of which are important things to try. There is also a new treatment that we've been talking about on the program for years, which for many people has been a game changer, and that is ketamine therapy. The research around ketamine therapy for anxiety and depression looks very promising, which is why I'm thrilled about our new sponsor, MindBloom. MindBloom is the leader in at-home ketamine therapy, having safely helped thousands of people with anxiety and depression. It's delivered to your door. It's done from the comfort of your home. And unlike traditional talk therapy, ketamine works quickly and doesn't have the unpleasant side effects of traditional antidepressants. In a study of over 1,200 MindBloom clients, 89% reported improvements in their anxiety and depression after just 2 sessions. Read about the evidence for ketamine therapy. We've talked about it on the show. It's pretty remarkable stuff. MindBloom is offering my audience $100 off your first 6-session program. Go to mindbloom.com/Pacman. Use the code Pacman. The link is in the description.